All right, what's up, guys? Welcome to Off the Wire, where we're going to get into current events. Could be world news, local news, sports, weather, anything that's important that's going on in the world. We're going to discuss it right here on the channel. So let's go ahead and get into it. I've already put one video up so far about sleeper cells that are in the United States, and I have a feeling it's just going to become a bigger problem. We've already seen stuff of that in Texas just a few days ago. So let's go ahead and get into the first video.
Talking to me again. What do you make of this, Dan? You have a behind-the-scenes look, I know now as well, but this is a big question. Who's in our country?
Well, a couple of things. That spike in interception of terrorists or suspected terrorists crossing the border, a lot of that is thanks to President Trump's FTO designation, or foreign terrorist organization designation, for the narco traffickers as well, Will. So some of that's attributed to that. There is zero doubt, as you accurately stated in your opening there, that the Biden administration, essentially their open border, let's just cut the crap, okay? It was an open border. I mean, we had Bill Malugin down there with the Fox News drone. You saw tens of millions of people over the course of the 4 years piling across the border. It is impossible to get an accurate head count down to the +1 of who is in the country because Biden opened the border. And it's the unknown Donald Rumsfeld problem. However, one thing about the Iranian nationals as well is Iranians, especially Iranian terror groups, which is largely the Mullah Islamo-fanatic crowd over there, they'll work with domestic actors as well. So the terror problem in the United States, yes, it's at the border. You're 100% correct. We don't know who's here, although we've done our best to catalog these people and triage the threats. But they'll also work with just regular street criminals, as we've seen with some of the DOJ indictments on these lethal plotting cases, to use them as well. So it's really like the Medusa problem. There's like, there's problems coming out everywhere.
Do we feel like we have a good grasp on that, Dan? When you say that, I think about a story that we talked about yesterday, that Virginia mosque that celebrated or memorialized the death of the Ayatollah. To your point, not all of these are going to be illegal immigrants. Some of them might even be legal U.S. citizens, but they're sympathizing with America's enemies. Do you feel like,
He said it right there. Not all of them have to be immigrants. Some of them could be regular U.S. citizens that have backgrounds to these other countries that support terrorism. So you don't know who is in this country. That's the problem. And with Biden opening up the border, I don't understand it, guys. I really don't.
The FBI and everybody else has a good grasp on where those threats lie?
Well, I can promise you, from 7 in the morning to 6+ at night, we probably had 3 or 4 meetings a day in the National Security Division, the Counter-Espionage, and the CT Counter-Terror Branch, both Kash and I, and our leadership. I feel like we've got, and I don't want to, this is not one of these mission accomplished moments, so I want to be very cautious and precise with my words. You never want to be comfortable, because if you're comfortable, you're going to get hit. However, I feel like we did everything we could do, and I know Kash is still doing it, on the cell problem, the terror cell, sleeper cell problem. I think we've got a good grasp around that, because if to coordinate is going to require communication, I feel like we've got a very good surveillance network. There's a co-equal problem, though, and you just kind of hinted at it, of self-radicalization. Some people may come here as Iranian nationals, Will, or foreign nationals from the Middle East or other countries that don't have the same, culture or values we do, and they get radicalized while they're here. It's a huge problem. It doesn't mean they're tied to a network, but to be clear, it doesn't make them any less dangerous than a network. I call it the Bourbon Street problem. The 2025 Bourbon Street attack. A guy took a car, made a right turn on Bourbon Street. I mean, how do you stop that?
Yeah, you guys remember that last year down in New Orleans with the Tesla truck? Just crazy.
The answer is good quality counter-espionage and CT work based on surveillance and sources. And if you don't have good sources, you can't make cars illegal and you can't make right turns illegal. You're going to have problems.
Well, and I would offer one other potential solution, or at least remedial measure, and that is be really, really strict are cognizant about who you let into this country. We're talking now legally, that you only let people come to this country who want to be and love America. Stop the problem before it ever starts. That might be the best policy here. Folks on immigration. Dan, it's really good to see you again.
All right, guys. So I am all for people coming into this country legally, but there's a process you got to follow. You got to be vetted. We got to know who's coming into this country. It's just like going out and getting a job, kind of. They run background checks on you. They want to know who they're letting into the country. And if we don't know who's coming into the country, God knows what they could do on United soil. It's just mind-blowing to me what's going on right now. Let's go ahead and get into the next video real quick with the FBI and stuff and what they're really watching out for.
In charge and former head of the Chicago PD, Jody Weiss. Good morning to you, sir. Let's start with the term sleeper cell. What exactly is it, and how do these sleeper cells operate inside a country like ours?
Yeah, great to be here, Jan. Sleeper cells are, as the name suggests, they're here, they're waiting. They come into the United States, they take part in normal life activities, they blend in, and then they wait. And then at some point they can be activated. You know, Hezbollah has been here many times. So I'm always fearful of that group that could have come in during our past 4 years.
Yeah, and these are not just lone wolf actors. They can be trained operatives. They can blend in. They can hold jobs, have families. They can live quietly for years before they're quote unquote activated. So how difficult are these types of operatives to detect, especially if they have little to no digital footprint?
Yeah, that's exactly the point, Jan. They're very difficult to pick up. They're not on social media. They aren't the flame-throwing protesters that we see on TV. These are people going to blend into our normal way of life. They could be your neighbor. They could be your friend. They could be anybody you run into normally. They are not going to be easy to detect, and that's what's make this such a dangerous situation.
How concerned are you about the millions of gotaways that crossed the border during the Biden administration? We do not know who they are, where they are, or why they eluded capture.
I'm very concerned about that. And in my opinion, it would be impossible for our adversaries not to have taken advantage of that open border and send people across. And we know they're here, Jan. My friend Chris Swecker back in 2000, he was running the FBI's North Carolina office. They took down a terrorism cell, a sleeper cell, if you would. We know from prosecutions that Hezbollah has been prosecuted in New Jersey, New York, and in Michigan. So we know they're here. And that was before we had 4 years of an open border where I think our adversaries had to take advantage of that.
And what about radicalization? You know, because we hear about foreign nationals and illegal immigrants failing to assimilate. They remain isolated within their own communities. Does that make them more vulnerable to extremism, easier to recruit?
Yeah, I think it does. If you don't come to the United States, you know, I've always said for immigrants to be successful, they've got to learn our language, take part, get a job, and actually be a part of that American dream, that the society, be a part of our society. If they don't, oftentimes what can happen overseas can influence their behavior and actions here. So you get somebody just keeps seeing stuff on the internet over and over again. If they don't feel a part of this country, they could very easily become radicalized and want to attack us.
And at the same time, the Iranian regime right now is under intense pressure, and history shows that when that regime feels cornered, it can become far more willing to take extreme risks. So are we looking at perhaps multi-city, simultaneous attacks, and how vulnerable are soft targets like hotels, you know, transportation hubs, I don't know, large public events? How vulnerable are those kinds of targets?
Jan, my biggest fear, other than a nuclear attack or a dirty bomb, would be a simultaneous multi-city attack. I was at the D.C. sniper case, and I saw where two individuals who had no interest in terror whatsoever. They were trying to kill an ex-wife, and they wanted her death to blend in with others. They shut down Virginia, D.C., and Maryland. Two idiots who were just going about wanting to kill someone. But think if that would have been a planned terrorist group in 5 or 6 different cities. But if you look at what a soft target is, it's a place where there's open access, easy accessibility, large crowds. And they're usually attacked in such a way to strike fear and really make us afraid of our normal way of life. So I got to steal a line from Sebastian Gorka. All of the viewers, please stay frosty. And by that, I mean, be prepared, stay alert, but don't get so paranoid that you let the threat of terrorism influence your life. There's not a terrorist behind every tree, but please be prepared and stay alert.
Stay frosty. So what is the FBI doing right now, and what should Americans be watching for? How do you spot a threat that's designed to be invisible?
Yeah, right now the FBI is running on all cylinders. Their JTTFs are running down every possible lead. They're working with the federal agencies, state and local. They're going to be checking every intel source. And I would always ask people, if you see anything that seems out of the ordinary, our population is our greatest ears and eyes. If you see something that just doesn't sit right, it just isn't normal to what you're seeing, call the FBI. And I would have to ask our folks in the Persian community, you know, if there's any attacks in the United States, you could very well be victims of retaliatory hate crimes. So if you see something, if you know something, please call local authorities, call the FBI.
And we have the number right here because the FBI has a tip line. So I'm glad you said that. 1-800-CALL-FBI. There's also a website you can go to right there. It is tips.fbi.gov. Former FBI special agent in charge and head of the Chicago PD, Jody Weiss. We appreciate all your insight. Thanks for joining us this.
All right, there you have it, guys. Let's go ahead and get into the last video with the Texas governor. Let's see what he has to say, because they just had something happen in their city literally just a few days ago.
And a rifle in the Sunday morning attack. He was spotted wearing a sweatshirt reading, quote unquote, property of Allah, and a shirt featuring the flag emblem of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Also, a Quran was also found in his vehicle. Joining me now is the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott. Governor, thank you so much for being here. You're worried about the threat of sleeper cells activated here at home. How worried should we be following Operation Epic Fury? Give us your insights this morning, sir.
So, Maria, has to be taken seriously, and that's exactly why early that morning on Saturday morning, we made clear to the public that the state of Texas is taking seriously about the possibility of terrorist activity, lone wolf activity, exactly what happened here in Austin, Texas. And you oftentimes see when there's a war breaking out like this, where the United States may be going against a country like Iran, that you could have either sleeper cells or lone wolves acting. And that's exactly why we increased the number of Texas Department of Public Safety officers to be patrolling the streets and patrolling sensitive areas, and why I deployed the Texas National Guard to do the same thing so that we could be as prepared as possible for things like this happening. Obviously, you've seen, and Fox has reported, how this guy acted the way you pointed out, wearing an Allah T-shirt, a T-shirt representing sympathies with Iran, as well as the Quran. And there are other details that will be coming out about the shooter and his connections to terrorism that will make clear this was a lone wolf activity where this shooter intended to wreak havoc here in Texas, here in the United States, because of his ties and sympathies with Iran. It calls into question a lot of people like that who are here in the United States, who came from other countries, that the United States has to do a far better job in trying to vet and evaluate and ongoingly evaluate those who've come to our country who could pose a danger.
Well, that's right. And for years, you single-handedly protected the border. You and, of course, once President Trump got back in office, he was the game changer. But throughout the Biden years, it was you protecting the border from illegals coming in, the Biden administration creating worries because we don't know who came in. From February 2021 to November 2024, more than 1,700 Iranian nationals crossed the southern border, Governor, and that could be a naive low number. What is your assessment of, you know, who's coming in and who came in during those years and what kind of threat they represent today?
Well, listen, the Trump administration and others have done a very good job of doing their best to try to document all of these people who have been crossing the border. There were known terrorists that Joe Biden led into the country. There were known murderers, rapists, and other criminals that Joe Biden allowed into the country. And when they got into the country, they were allowed to disperse across the entire United States of America. One struggle that the President Trump is dealing with is trying to locate all of these very dangerous people that were admitted by Joe Biden and make sure we get to them before they harm anybody else. And that's exactly what's taking place right now. In Texas, we have 4 Joint Terrorism Task Force. We have 8 fusion centers, all of which are working around the clock as we speak right now, looking for any type of dangerous terrorist activity that could be arising in the state of Texas. We need to see the same thing taking place across the United States of America, because we know that dangerous people like that exists in our states. And we need a collaborative, broad sweeping effort by local, state, and federal officials to root out all these terrorists that were allowed in by Joe Biden and make sure we get them, arrest them, and deport them.
Yeah, and let me just point out that when President Trump, in his first term, told us the facts that they were letting in murderers, rapists, etc., he was mocked by the left, mocked by the establishment. Everything he said was correct. And now we are all, unfortunately, feeling the brunt of it. Just last week, you announced an order increasing Department of Public Safety agents along the southern border, as you just said, over this threat of new cartel violence in Mexico, growing threats of retaliation from Iran as well. Tell us about the Mexico situation, because we know that the Mexican cartels have been running Mexico, or we believe so. Your thoughts?
So listen, what's going on the Texas border as well as the entire U.S. border with Mexico would be a fluid situation. The deal is we know what happened with this cartel and their reaction and what they tried to do. And when activities like that occur, we know there could be spillover violence here into the state of Texas. One of the locations where there was cartel violence was Reynosa, which is just right across the river from Brownsville, Texas. And there are other locations right along the border where spillover activity could occur either in person or by drone. And so we are escalating our efforts to make sure that we're doing everything we can to secure the border. But, Maria, here's the deal. You should expect that this cartel violence that occurred a week ago is not going to be the last of it. President Trump has been very clear. He wants to see the elimination of the heads of all these different cartels. And it seemed like Mexico is working collaboratively to remove those cartel heads. Whenever things like that happen, you see the mayhem that we saw this last week. And so Texas is going to remain vigilant, securing every corner of our border from any type of cartel spillover activity.
Yeah, and meanwhile, the Democrats are looking at this as an opportunity to pounce, hoping that something in this middle of chaos or the fog of war gets people confused about what's going on and votes Democrat. Thousands of Texans will be heading to the polls tomorrow for the crucial Senate primary election. Lots of spending there. Give us your sense of the 2026 vote and whether or not everything you are saying this morning is resonating with the reality on the ground and resonating with those people who will be voting.
So, Maria, whenever there are midterm elections, there's always a backlash against the party in power. Right now, that's the Republicans. And we saw that same thing occur during President Trump's last midterm election when Beto O'Rourke almost beat Ted Cruz. And there's what you call an enthusiasm gap. However, based upon what you just said, your question, we will be using that as Republicans and going into the campaigns of contrasting Republicans versus Democrats, because it's the Democrats who have allowed in terrorists and other dangerous people into our country in their open border policies. And when we show the contrast between the law and order, rule of law positions that Republicans have versus the open border policies and the defund the police movement and things like that, we will be able to make clear to voters that it's going to be Republicans that most Texans align with as opposed to Democrats. So kind of regardless of what happens tomorrow in Texas elections, when we make the turn and go to November, it'll be a dramatic contrast between Republicans and Democrats. The Democrats in Texas are more closely aligned with Mamdani in New York than they are with the core values of Texas.
And you've seen...
That's another thing, too, guys. The new mayor of New York, Mamdani, whether you agree with him, don't agree with him, he is destroying that city, one of the greatest cities in the United States of America, and he is taking it down with his taxes, promises he said that were going to come and never delivered to the citizens. It just doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever of what's going on in New York City right now.
That play out in a real way because people are leaving cities like New York because of Mamdani, because of all the high taxes, leaving states like California, wealth tax, et cetera, poor governance there, and coming to Texas. That has strengthened your economy in Texas as well.
So, and you see behind me all of the governor's cups that Texas has won because we rank #1 for economic development. I'm getting another one today that I've gotten every single year that I've been governor. And it's because Texas, for one, has the best economic development program of any state in the United States of America. But also, our economy is growing fast. We're ranked #1 for jobs, #1 for capital investment, #1 for headquarter moves to our state. And so the Texas model simply works better. And that's why we are creating Y'all Street, where the exchanges in New York are coming to the state of Texas, because capitalism exists in a robust state like Texas and cannot exist in a communistic regime like Mamdani in New York.
Well,
All right, guys. So that's all I got for you today. But just everyone just needs to stay vigilant, be aware of your surroundings, do whatever you need to do to protect yourself and your family. I'm not saying to become paranoid and scared. We're American. We do not get scared, and we don't let terrorists like that push us around especially in our own country. Just stay vigilant, keep your head on a swivel, be aware of what's going on. Guys, there is so much going on in the country right now. It is unreal. We have the Mexico cartels. We have Venezuela that we just did not too long ago. We still had the Russia and Ukraine war that was going on that was supposed to be over in 3 days, according to what Putin said. We got China eyeballing Taiwan. Now we're involved with Iran and Israel. Guys, stuff is just spiraling out of control, and everyone just needs to stay aware and stay vigilant. That's all I have for you guys today, guys. I just want to say thank you. Check out my other channel too. I do have a paranormal channel also on YouTube. At the Darker Side 83 is my other channel name. Go over there and check out that channel if you guys are into paranormal stuff. I do ghost hunting stuff too. But yeah, thanks for joining me today, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good one, guys.